It's a beautiful day to be in Clarksville, Tennessee. I want to welcome everybody to the Clarksville Rotary Club. It's our honor to have you with us today. And just remind everyone to check your cell phones, so we don't want anyone to get embarrassed today. Today's greeter was Dan Dickinson. Dan? Thank you, sir. Mr. Gary Ellis will do our pledge. Ed Larson will do our invocation. Miss Lori Austin, the four-way test. And then Sergeant at Arms Joe Sweden. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Lord God, Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord. Thank you for this beautiful day provided for us. Thank you for this nation and the freedom we have to gather in assembly. And Lord, thank you for the areas of service that have come to avail to us. We thank you for our government officials, the leadership they provide. We thank you for the food provided for us. We bless this food nourish our bodies and our bodies to your service. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First.
Is it the truth?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? All righty. Everybody may have a seat. Well, we have a lot of very special guests today, and we are certainly glad that you could join us. We want to welcome our illustrious mayor, county mayor, Mayor Bowers. Carolyn, it's nice to have you with us today. Carolyn and I have a unique friendship. We go all the way back to high school when she was our class sponsor and used to try to keep me straight. We want to welcome our county commissioners. Would they please stand, our county commissioners? All righty, ladies and gentlemen, nice to have you with us. Our city council folks, would they please stand? All righty. We also want to welcome State Representative Kurt Dog Johnson. Used to sit in the end of the football stadium watching Curtis play football. He had a hole about that big, and Kurt Dog could come right on through there. Curtis said, well, I was about that big, and I said, well, I know that feeling. I think we could probably wear smalls back in, couldn't we, Kurt Dog? We want to welcome today's members of the Industrial Development Board, the EDC, the Chamber, and the Tourism Board. Would they please stand? All right. As you came in today, you'll see a painting right outside the door. Miss Lynn Griffey, Lynn, you please stand, does a painting for our Rotary auction each year. And that picture is of the old Clarksville Hospital, which will be auctioned at our auction on February the 25th. Miss Kelly Jackson and Beverly Taylor will be outside selling tickets and answering anybody's questions today about the auction if you have any questions. It will be held here at the Country Club on February the 25th. All right. Where's Joe Sweden? I always forget about our Sergeant at Arms. Joe! All righty. Thank you. It is our pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Governor Bill Haslam, today. Governor Haslam was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee, where he was taught to have a strong faith and a strong work ethic. Excelling in both academics and sports, Governor Haslam also was a leader in student government. At the age of 13, his first job was pumping gas at the family-owned service station.
Got the whole history in here.
That's right. You hadn't met the historian right over there, Billy Atkins. But you know, there's a lot of folks, maybe some folks don't remember when you used to pump gas and clean windshields. Isn't that right, Governor?
That's right.
He quickly learned that running a small business took diligence and hard work. Governor Haslam graduated from Emory University with a degree in history, and as a young man, he volunteered in the grassroots political campaigns of Howard Baker and Lamar Alexander. This gave him a deep understanding of principled leadership. After graduation from Emory, Governor Haslam returned to Knoxville to manage the family's small chain of gas stations. He spent long days traveling the region to locate and purchase ideal locations for future truck stops. When Governor Haslam first went to work for Pilot Corporation, it had 800 employees, and when it left, it had 14,000 employees in 39 states. In 2003, at the urging of family and friends, Governor Haslam successfully ran for mayor of Knoxville and proved to be an effective and popular leader. In 2007, Governor Haslam was reelected as mayor of Knoxville with 87% of the vote. Mayor, you take 87%, wouldn't you? What about you, Clerk Dog? County Commissioner, City Councilman, y'all take 87%? While mayor, 7 consecutive city budgets were balanced, the rainy day fund was tripled, and city government was focused on providing city services in an efficient manner. Governor Haslam helped found education initiatives and recruited and retained thousands of jobs. During the 2009-10 campaign, Governor Haslam made numerous visits to Clarksville and Montgomery County, where he got to know us pretty well as Tennessee's 5th largest city. His dad is also an Army veteran, and so Governor Haslam has a deep appreciation for our military and our veterans. Please join me in welcoming Governor Haslam to the Clarksville Rotary Club and the Clarksville and Montgomery County. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me without the mic? I'll use it if I need. Can you hear me okay without it? In the back, we good? Okay, well, thank you all. It is great to be back in Clarksville and Montgomery County. I did run a 2-year campaign, and there's a lot of downsides to that, as anybody who's ever run for office would tell you. But the upside to that is you meet a lot of people, and people literally become your friends because you come back so often. And I truly feel that way about Clarksville and Montgomery counties. I look around this room, I see a whole lot of people who helped me, some who started helping me very early in the process. But regardless, a lot of people that Chrissy and I both got to know and come to have a deep friendship with. So it really is good to be back here. Chrissy sends her best. Like everywhere else when I walk in the room, people go, "Is Chrissy with you?" And she actually has become incredibly busy in her role as First Lady. She's taken a lot of education initiatives. We also had the honor of having our first grandchild born about 6 weeks ago. And from everything I can tell, I might be a little biased, everything I can tell, this is the smartest, best-looking, most athletic child ever born. So, I mean, it's early, so that could change, but we're pretty sure that's true. Let me just here's what I'd like to do today. I'd love to talk a little bit, tell you kind of what we're trying to do right now, tell you some of the legislative proposals that we have out to the legislature. And Kurt Dog, that's a new one for me. I was thinking this, though, Curtis. I was thinking, what if we started every session of the legislature with the 4-way test? Of course, I thought the conversation, if the conversation started with, is it the truth, everything would get a little shorter, maybe. But that would maybe work for Congress, and I mean... But it's not a bad idea for the way to do things, right? But so I want to tell you a little bit of what our agenda is going to be, and then talk a little some of the things we're trying to do from the governor's office. And then I really fully intend to leave plenty of time for questions and comments. One of the things I'm determined not to do as governor is to spend all my time on Capitol Hill. It's a wonderful place. I feel honored every time I walk up the steps to my office in the Capitol. I think this is an incredible privilege to get to do what I do, and I really mean that. I don't ever walk in that building without thinking that. But also remind myself that government doesn't just happen here on the Hill in Nashville, and anybody who's going to do a great job of leading needs to spend a lot more time off of Capitol Hill than they do on it. And so we're committed to doing that. Part of that is having a chance to have some dialogue and hear what people are thinking and questions they might want to ask me. Well, two big new things for us this year, or in the last week or so. Number one, the legislature came back to town. They started, I guess, a week ago yesterday. Is that right, Curtis? And then this past Sunday was actually the 1-year anniversary of inauguration. So, you know, when you have anniversaries like that, it's a good time to pause and look back and think, okay, what's happened so far? What are we trying to do? And then the combination with that, with the legislature being in town, gives a lot of prompting to do that as well. Let me just stop and ask a question. This is audience participation time. What do you think the governor's job is? What's the governor supposed to do? Govern, okay. I agree with that. But what's that mean? So what's that look like? You're writing a training manual for the governor. Because, by the way, people have all sorts of different expectations of what the governor can and should do. What do you think the governor's job should be?
Lead powerful.
Lead by example. Okay, I'll take that. What else? Say again. Budgets is a huge one. Anybody, by the way, Curtis, you can't say. Anybody know what the total state budget is in Tennessee government?
28.
Billy had a guess, close. It's about $31 billion. Okay, that's with a B. That's a lot of money, right? The trick to that is the year before the state budget was about $32 billion. When the federal stimulus plan hit, it sent money out a lot of places. One of those was to state governments. That was about 3 years ago. Well, that all unfortunately ran out right about when we came into office. So this last year's budget was actually, while it was a lot, $31 billion, it was actually cut. But when you said budget, you're right. Well, here's one thing I've learned about being in government. Nobody really, they work hard to pay attention to the budget, and then nobody really pays attention to it after that. The state of Tennessee's fiscal year ended June 30th of 2011. That was 6.5 months ago. Okay, since that time, since it ended, I've not had one person in the media or anywhere else say, "So, how'd you do? You ended the year. How'd you do? How'd you do on your budget?" Billy, I'm guessing that several of your shareholders every now and then said, "Oh, how'd you do? You set a budget." Yeah, what's that? But in government, people don't ask you that. But it really is maybe the most important thing you do. Budget really is policy, and where you decide to put money says a lot about your priorities, or says everything about your priorities. And then how you perform to that budget says a lot about your strength as a leader. And so budgeting is one of the key things. We're actually in the last stages. I will present the budget January 30th, which is 12 days from now, at the State of the State address, which we'll do from the House chamber there, like I said, the night of January 30th. What else is the governor supposed to do?
You're the face of Tennessee.
You become the face of Tennessee in a lot of ways. Everything from recruiting businesses to come here. And by the way, I should start here. You all should know what an outstanding job you are doing in Clarksville, Montgomery County with economic development, job recruitment. Every now and then I think folks here don't really, because the recession we went through, and while I know you felt it here, you didn't feel it as strong as some other places. I think that the incredible work, and I know some people that work in economic development are here, the incredible work you all have done, I think has been, number one, it's been a great breath of fresh air to the entire state, but it's made such a difference here that maybe you can't appreciate if you only spend your time here, but I travel all through the state, and I can tell you what you've done here is significant, and it's made a big difference. And it's because of the number of people who have pitched in to make a difference. But, right, the governor's the face of the state, whether it's recruiting business or promoting tourism or just, leading in difficult times. What else? Interact with Washington, which is huge. Of that $31 billion budget, does anybody know how much of the money comes from Washington? What percentage? Roughly half, okay? I mean, it's not exactly, but that kind of helps you figure. Most of that money is for things like Medicaid, it's for education, a lot of the social programs, and then obviously some other things that come to us through money that supports our Tennessee National Guard, the folks who are from Tennessee that are over, many of those are actually who are still deployed. I had the honor of going to Iraq and Afghanistan this summer and seeing what the folks who represent us over there do. And I knew it was hard work. I came back with an incredible appreciation for that. But anyway, that's part of the state budget as well. So interacting with Washington and making certain Tennessee's needs and views get represented as a piece. What else? Anything else? Reflect the values of the people. And that's a little trickier than you might think it is, right? Because everybody has a different view of what the values of the people are. But that is, in the end of you run for office and you try to be clear as you can about, here's what I represent. And then you try then to listen as well. And part of leading, and we have some incredibly talented military leaders with us today, and they could tell you there's a balance between listening and leading. And you listen to the right point, and then you lead. And part of that is reflecting the values of the people that you represent. Anything else before I go on? There's one other big role that everybody, that too. But working with the legislature is a big piece because, and I'm going to talk about that next. While I'm the governor, I still have to get the legislature to pass the budget and to pass any initiatives that we propose, and we're going to talk about those in a second. Here's the other big thing. The state of Tennessee is basically a 40,000 person employee organization. And we do everything from, we build roads and bridges, we help educate 4-year-olds, we educate PhD students, we help families that want to adopt children, we help families that have mental health or intellectual disability issues. We help recruit jobs and businesses to people like to places like Montgomery County. I can go on, but I think maybe my main job is making certain that we're providing the very best service we can for the lowest possible price. Now, what's the price? If you said the price, what's the price? What's the price of government? Taxes. Okay, taxes. And my job is to provide the very, very best service we can at the very lowest price. I think that's something that maybe gets missed a lot of time. Think about this, and then I'm going to go to what I'm talking about. What's the purpose of government? What's the purpose? Well, it's to protect the peace. It's to provide safe environment. But one of those things is to provide things that people can't buy themselves, right? The federal government provides a national defense that we can't go by ourselves. Like you can't say, I think I'll go, a few people can, maybe Bill Gates can, but not many people can say, I'm going to go hire an army. Okay? You can't do that. So the federal, we pay taxes to do that. State government, you pay taxes to do a lot of things that you can't do yourself. You'd like to have a road you can drive from here to Nashville. It's pretty hard for people to do that themselves. You'd like to have a system that helps people that have mental health issues that's across the state. Well, you can't do all those things are things that you pay taxes for things you can't do yourself that the government can do. But our job is to make certain we do that the most effective way we can. And I think that sometimes gets lost in the translation of exactly what's the purpose. So this year, we're launching our legislative initiative with some things that we think help do that better. The very first set of things all had to do around the issue of public safety. One of the big issues, in doing anything we propose, we try to really target things that are real issues. Unfortunately, one of the biggest issues in Tennessee right now dealing with safety is around prescription drug abuse. Okay, right now we have, I know there's several physicians in the audience. Right now, Tennessee is the second leading state in number of prescriptions per capita. We're second only to West Virginia. The national average is about 12. Tennessee's at about 17. Okay, here's maybe an interesting thing to think about that's a little scary. Emergency rooms now for drug overdoses treat more people for prescription drug overdoses than they do for illegal narcotics. Okay, we have a major issue in Tennessee, and one of our key initiatives this year is to address that. Second thing around safety is to crack down on gang-related crime. Anytime a crime is committed with 3 or more people involved, there'll be extra penalties because of that. With the thought you got 3 people in there with a gun pointing something, there's a lot more likely for something wrong to go on during a crime than if it's just one person. So increased penalties. Increased penalties for people with prior that are using guns that have prior felony convictions as well. We want to crack down on that. While we want to work hard to protect the Second Amendment rights of all of our citizens, those people who aren't supposed to have guns, we want to crank up the penalties for them. And then we also, another piece of that is we're going to have mandatory sentences in Tennessee for people who are repeat domestic violence offenders. Unfortunately, in Tennessee right now, domestic violence, we're in the bottom of the top 10%, whichever is the worst, for domestic violence incidences per capita. And about 70% of those are committed by people with prior convictions. And unfortunately, you could have multiple convictions in Tennessee for domestic violence and still never spend a day in jail. We think that's wrong, and we're going to put a minimum sentence in place for that. The second set of areas that we're proposing for legislation this year are all around job creation. Again, you all have done such a great job here that a lot of the things you're doing here, quite frankly, we're going to copy other places around the state. But one of the things you have to do now, like it or not, is to put the right incentives in place. Tennessee has 2 ways that we incentivize businesses that are moving here. One is through direct grants, what we call fast track, and some of the people in this room have worked with that. Fast track are direct grants that we can use for either infrastructure, building a road to the new plant, or for job training. Some of the programs like Hemlock is doing with Austin P here in town. The other ways that states incentivize businesses are through tax credits. Those are credits against future obligations down the road. Tennessee has in the past done a little bit of both. We think there should be a little bit heavier weighted toward the cash grants because that's what companies care about. It's money that they can figure when they're doing making expansion plans right now. We also have put a new focus on existing businesses in the state of Tennessee. What we found out is about 70-75% of the new jobs created in Tennessee are created by existing businesses, and we're working hard to incentivize those. The other key emphasis for us this year will be on education. Tennessee has made huge strides in education, but here's some consistent feedback I hear. Over the past year, I've literally sat down with hundreds of businesses that are located in Tennessee now and those who are considering it. People, we've had round tables. We had one here in Clarksville. We've had people to the governor's residence. I've gone to Chicago, to New York, to Los Angeles, to Atlanta, talking to different businesses about Tennessee and what would encourage them to locate here. Increasingly, I get very consistent feedback. The good is we love the spirit of the workforce in Tennessee. We keep the work ethic. We love that. We have concerns about the breadth and depth of your training and the talent, particularly in engineering. And as Tennesseans, we have to do a better job of preparing folks. College is not for everyone. Believe me, I understand that. There's a lot of folks that need a different path through high school than pointed to college. But in the future, it has to be for more Tennesseans than it's been for in the past. Right now, of the adults over the age of 25 in Tennessee, 21% have college degrees. Nationally, that number's about 30%. Okay? Here's the issue. We're obviously we're way behind the national average, but here's maybe even more concerning. Of the new jobs that are going to be created in the next 10 years, about 55% of those will require a degree. We're going to have to put a greater emphasis on college attendance and college graduation. We do that. You don't start that, when you're a senior in high school. You started at K. And I think some of the new emphasis we're putting on in Tennessee will make a huge difference in that. Unfortunately, with the states, there's something called a national report card. It's done by the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And Tennessee has basically in 4th grade and 8th grade reading and math scores has remained stagnant for the last several years. And you might say, well, maybe that's because of the sort of state we are. We're not the wealthiest state in the world, the wealthiest state in the country. Education often is a reflection of demographics and income level. Maybe it's that. Here's a disconcerting fact. If you take some of our surrounding states, North Carolina, Kentucky, Arkansas, Georgia, Missouri, and just take low-income children, kids that are on free and reduced lunch at school, okay? We lag behind even our neighboring states when you just measure low-income students versus low-income students. We have to take a different path in education in Tennessee, and we're having some initiatives this year that we think can make a difference in that. All right, I want to come back to something else. Remember I said maybe the governor's main job is to provide great service at the lowest price. Forget it's government for now. Think about anything, whether it's your restaurant you go to, the dry cleaners, anything, any business that you're a customer of. What's the key ingredient that makes you decide to keep using that business? Quality of service. Somebody said that was great. Who else? Value. I want to make sure I'm getting value for what I pay for. Those are both great and very pertinent to what we're doing. What else? Experience. As a customer, I've been there before. I know it works. Great. Now, I'm not going to ask you, but think in it for a second about the places you interact with Tennessee state government. Now, sometimes some of you might think, I don't really do that anywhere. But think about when you go to get your driver's license or you deal with one of our agencies or something. What's your experience? Not good, I heard from somebody. And I'm sorry about that because I want to say this. That's our job. Our job is to give you great service. And I will say this. We have 40,000 employees in the state of Tennessee. And so many of them are incredibly dedicated, committed people who work hard every day to give great service. And a lot of times we do. But we can. I was talking with somebody, and I won't use their name, who deals with the state, and I said, well, how are we doing? And she goes, there's always room for improvement, which was her very tactful way of saying not so well. Okay? And I understand that, and I also understand that's part of our job is to address that. Here's what I know. In a business, in a sports team, in a military unit, anything, the team with the best players wins. Okay, I just believe that to be true. The Army with the best soldiers wins. The business with the best customer service representatives wins. I just believe inherently that that's true. Okay, here's our problem in the state of Tennessee. We have an employment system that's broken. And if you don't ever deal with the state, you might not be aware of this. But let me tell you a little bit how it works. Let's say we have there's two kinds of employees in the state of Tennessee. You have employees who are at will. That's about 10% of them. Those are people that the governor can say tomorrow, thank you very much, but your services are no longer needed. Or can say tomorrow, I want Deanna to come fill this position, and you can do it. About 10% of the employees are that way. The other 90% are civil service employees. And here's how to fill a position works for there. Let's say we decide we have an open spot. We can't just go out and say, I'm going to go over to, I know a great engineer, or I know a great accountant, or I know a great customer service rep, and bring them in. They have to basically go on what's called a registry. And to go on that, to get on the register, to be registered on the registry, is a very long and complicated process that takes weeks or months. And then by the time you finally get on there, the main criteria for moving up the list is experience. So the net result is this. We're like a football team that can't go out and recruit. We only can take those people who sign up to play for our team. And then when it comes time to play the game, we don't get to play the best players. We play the players who have been on the team the longest. Now, experience is usually a very helpful thing, right? By and large, if I said I have a team, I'll stay with my football analogy, I have a team full of seniors, and you have a team full of sophomores, I like my odds better, right? Experience is a very valuable thing. But it shouldn't be the only criteria for how you decide who's going to play on that football team, right? Skill and performance should be part of that. But in the state, we can't use that as part of a measure for who gets hired. And it's incredibly restraining in terms of making certain we build the great team we want. The second thing then you have is something called bumping. So let's just say that this is entirely foreign to anybody who's never been in government, but some of you are familiar with this process. Let's just say I work in Clarksville for the Department of Transportation, okay? And I'll pick on the mayor, and Billy and I we're all administrative assistants, okay? And the department decides, we want to take some of the money we're putting in administrative assistants, no offense to you, Bill and Billy and Carolyn, but we have a lot of technology now. We just need 2 positions there. We want to take that money and add another engineer for the Department of Transportation. And we go, oh gosh. And they say, well, and here's how it works. Bill has been there 18 years. Billy has been there 16, and Carolyn has just been there 15 years. And so Carolyn is the one who loses her job. And so Carolyn loses her job, and which is horrible because Hugh is her boss, and Hugh says, she was my best employee, but she has the least number of years experience, so she loses her job. But Carolyn's smart, and she looks around and she sees there's a Department of Children's Services administrative assistant position in Davidson County. And there's an administrative assistant there that just has 11 years service. So she goes and bumps that person out of their job. Okay, and then that person goes, darn, but they look around and see there's a Department of Human Services employee in Wilson County who's just been there 9 years. And they go and bump that person out of their job. And on and on and on. Never once in that whole process, never once was merit or performance part of the decision about who kept their job. Now that's just wrong. Okay, and I challenge you to say, do you all know of any business that runs that way? And no, they don't, because you couldn't compete if you did, because it's not fair. If Hugh's our boss, and the 3 of us do that, he's really sorry that he's going to lose. That he's going to lose the mayor because she's the best of us. It's not fair to him as a boss, and then he doesn't know. The same thing could happen somewhere else, and somebody with more experience comes and bumps out one of his great people. It's just the wrong way to do state government, and we're addressing that. People go, well, how did that ever come to be? Why did you ever get a system where, You don't hire on the basis of suitability to the job and performance, and you don't decide who keeps their job or who even gets promoted. Here's another thing in state. Let's just say back to this. Carolyn's doing a great job. Billy's doing an average job. Okay, sorry, Billy. It just happens to work for this story. Okay, but throughout the year, that's what happens. And actually, it's worked that way for 2 or 3 years. And Carolyn is actually really good and should get a raise and should get promoted. But Carolyn and Billy get the same raise regardless of performance, and they have for the last 5 or 6 years. And Carolyn really can't even get a promotion because to go to the next level, to do that, somebody would have to consider, the supervisor there would have to consider a whole different experience level that would trump what she had, even though she's a great employee and deserves that. So the question is, you go, well, that's the most convoluted thing I've ever heard of. How did it get there? So how did a system like that ever get in place? Anybody know? By the way, there's always a good reason behind, when you have a messed up situation, there was usually good motivation behind it until, bureaucracy took over or whatever. So what was the initial good motivation behind that? Cronyism, right? You didn't want to just have, here comes the new governor, and he's going to put everybody who worked for him in the election, plus Uncle Freddie and his niece Wilma, etc., and I'm going to give all them jobs, right? That was what it was trying to prevent. Okay, but I'll tell you this. What's happened is the cure for that has been way worse than the original illness. Okay, we've put this in place, and what we've developed is an incredibly ineffective way to do government, a way that no one else would do. You might say, well, how do you know that won't just happen? Well, these were all put in place back when state government was much smaller. With 40,000 employees, surrounded by media of all type, from bloggers to TV stations to hundreds of media outlets, it's really not like the days where somebody just came in and was able to wipe out the whole state government, put all their buddies in. Number one, like I said, it's too big. The skill levels needed are too great. And number three, the media observation, regardless of how you feel about the media, actually plays a healthy role there and keeps that from happening. I'll give you another fact. Say, well, but that still would scare me. Remember how I said there are 2 different kinds of employees in state government. There's at-will employees. The governor can fire them tomorrow. And then there's civil service employees. The average term of at-will employees, those people who can be fired tomorrow, in state government is 12 and a half years. Okay, you want to guess what the average term of civil service employees, those who have a different level of protection, you want to guess what their average term is? 12 and a half years. Okay, so it's not happening now. Even with this protection in there, you don't have a different set of criteria in there. Okay, so it's something we're going to propose a major change. You might go, well, I'm a citizen in Clarksville. What difference does that make to me? Here's what difference it makes. You pay your tax dollars to get the very best service you can, and to do that, you should expect to have the very best people that we can hire. They're taking care of that service for you, and we can't do that now. So that's a big initiative. Here's the last one, and then I'm going to stop and I talked too long. And I'm going to stop and have some questions. Remember, I always said, somebody said, what's the government's job? Is to provide value. Well, value is a function of service plus price, right? And the price is taxes. We're proposing this year to lower taxes in 2 key areas. One is on the grocery sales tax that you pay when you buy food. Everybody in Tennessee buys groceries. Now, you can argue that wealthier people pay more in sales tax because they tend to spend more. But with groceries, everybody tends to probably buy about the same amount. And so you can argue that if there's any tax that we should lower that will touch everybody in Tennessee, it's the grocery sales tax. And we're proposing to lower it over the next 3 years from 5.5% to 5%. This year, taking it down from 5.5% to 5.3%. Real value for people who are paying their taxes every day. The second area is in what's called the estate tax. Anybody know what the estate tax is? You pay it when what happens? When you die. Okay? In the federal government, there's an exemption level. As long as your estate is worth less than $5 million, you don't owe anything. But in Tennessee, does anybody know what that exemption level is? $1 million. Okay? So think about what happens. If, let's just say you have an estate worth about $3.5 million, you're on the positive side of 50, and you think, I'm going to owe a lot of tax if I die in Tennessee. So what do? Exactly. We have a whole lot of people who are Tennesseans who have said, it's cheaper for me to die in Florida. And they have literally, now that you still see them around, by the way. I guarantee you know somebody who you think lives in Clarksville, Montgomery County, but is legally a resident of somewhere else. I guarantee you all know somebody like that, okay? So they pick up and move. Now, they're still here, a lot of the time. They pick up and move to prevent paying tax. So we lose that resident. We lose, by the way, the capital that person might invest in starting more small businesses. So that's a problem. But what happens if your $3 million is not in stock? What happens if your $3 million is in your family farm or your family tire shop or cleaning business? What do you do then? You got to sell, because when you die, if that's where all your assets are, the only way you have to pay for the tax liability is to sell your business. Okay, so people say, well, I don't get it. Why should you care about the estate tax? That feels like it only affects a few people, and those are wealthy people who can take care of themselves. But I would argue it's in all of our economic interests to begin to raise the level from the Tennessee exemption level of $1 million to the federal exemption level of $5 million. It will benefit all of us by leaving more people here who are spending their capital to grow businesses here, and then keeping more family businesses and family farms in the hands of private families rather than selling out, to companies that don't even have their headquarters in Tennessee.